Have you ever wondered how the super rich seem to grow their fortunes year after year, sometimes without paying a single dollar in income tax? When you hear about figures like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos living these incredible lives but reporting very little taxable income, well, this is the world they operate in. And it's not magic, and it's definitely not illegal. It's a powerful financial strategy that plays by a totally different set of rules than most of us were taught. And honestly, it reveals this huge divide in how money really works.
You see, most of us, we live our financial lives in System 1. We earn a paycheck, the government takes its cut right off the top, and we live off whatever's left. It's this constant cycle of earning and spending. But there's this whole other system, System 2, that the wealthy use. And it's not based on earning, it's based on owning. It's a world built on assets, leverage, and growing your wealth in a way that's incredibly tax efficient.
So here's what we're going to break down in this explainer. We'll look at these two financial worlds, introduce the buy, borrow, die strategy, and walk through exactly how it works step by step. Then we'll ask, can a version of this actually apply to the rest of us? We'll also cover the very real risks involved, and finally we'll talk about the massive mindset shift that makes all of this possible.
All right, it's called the buy, borrow, die strategy. Yeah, I know, it sounds a little morbid, but the name actually describes its 3 stages perfectly. The whole idea here is to stop living off of taxable income, and instead, fund your lifestyle using your growing assets and some really low-interest loans.
It really boils down to these 3 simple but pretty profound steps. First, you buy assets that are designed to grow in value. Second, you borrow against those assets to get the cash you need to live on. And third, well, you die, and that triggers a really unique tax rule that sets your heirs up for success. So let's break each of those down.
So step 1, buy. This is all about a fundamental shift in how you think. You're moving away from an earning mindset, where you trade your time for money, to an owning mindset, where you acquire assets that work for you 24/7. And what kind of assets are we talking about? Things like stocks, real estate, maybe entire businesses, really anything that has the potential to grow in value over time. But here's the absolute golden rule, the principle this whole strategy is built on. The growth of these assets, what the finance world calls unrealized gains, is not taxed. You only pay tax if and when you sell. That one rule changes everything.
Okay, now we get to the part that feels totally backward to most of us, borrowing. If you need cash, what does the traditional mindset tell you to do? Sell some of your investments, right? Well, this strategy says do the exact opposite. Never sell. Instead, you borrow against the value of your portfolio.
And why on earth would you do that? It all comes down to this one simple, beautiful sentence. Under the tax code, a loan is not income. Think about it. When you get a mortgage or a car loan, you don't report that money to the IRS as earnings. It's the same principle. You get cash to spend completely tax-free. This is the loophole that makes the engine run.
Let's make this real with an example. Let's say you have $1 million stock portfolio, and you need $100 grand for something. If you sell off $100,000 worth of stock, boom, you're hit with a capital gains tax bill, let's call it 20 grand. So now you only have $900,000 left in your portfolio to keep growing. But what if you borrow that $100,000 instead? Your tax bill is 0, and your full $1 million portfolio stays invested, chugging along, continuing to grow. I mean, the difference is just staggering when you see it laid out like that.
And that brings us to the final and maybe the most powerful piece of the puzzle. This is where that long-term generational wealth part really kicks in. So you might be wondering, what about all those loans you've been taking out? And what about all those massive untaxed gains sitting in your portfolio?
Well, this is where a little-known tax rule called the step-up in basis comes into play. It's incredible. When a person passes away, the official cost of their assets gets stepped up to whatever the market value is on the day they die. So imagine your grandfather bought a stock for $10 and it's worth $100 when he passes. For his heirs, it's as if they bought it for $100 themselves. That entire $90 gain, poof, it's never taxed. The slate is wiped totally clean and the whole cycle can begin all over again.
Okay, so right about now, you're probably thinking, this is all fascinating, but come on, this is for billionaires, not for me. And look, you're right that the ultra-wealthy use this at a massive scale. But the core principles here can actually be applied by almost anyone, just in a much more careful, conservative way.
You absolutely do not need to be a billionaire for these ideas to matter. The mindset shift can start to apply with a much more relatable portfolio. Even with a foundation of, say, $50,000, you can begin thinking differently about how your money works for you.
So what does a simpler, safer version of this look like for the rest of us? First, the absolute must-have, build your investment portfolio and just let it grow for the long haul. Second, avoid selling your default mindset. You want to let compounding do all the heavy lifting for you. And third, if you absolutely have to tap into that value, you borrow conservatively. This is crucial. This is for needs, not wants. We're talking about a small loan for a critical home repair, not a big loan for a fancy new car. The goal is always to keep your core assets working for you, uninterrupted, for as long as possible.
But, and this is a really, really important but, this strategy is not a free lunch. It comes with some serious risks. Using leverage, which is just a fancy word for borrowing money, is a double-edged sword. It can absolutely amplify your gains, but man, it can also amplify your losses in a big way.
So here are the biggest dangers you have to watch out for. If the market crashes hard, the value of your assets, your collateral, could plummet. That can trigger what's called a margin call. That's when your broker literally forces you to sell your assets at the worst possible time, at rock-bottom prices to pay back the loan. It's how fortunes get completely wiped out. And on top of that, you have the risk of rising interest rates, which can make your loan payments spiral out of control. This isn't a casual strategy. It takes a ton of discipline.
You know, when you strip away all the technical jargon, what we've really been talking about is more than just a set of financial tactics. It's a fundamental shift in how you see money and wealth. It's all about moving from an earner's mindset to an owner's mindset.
It really does come down to these two completely different ways of thinking. The traditional path is basically to break the piggy bank. You sell your assets, you pay your taxes, and you spend whatever's left over. The wealthy mindset is to protect the fortress. You keep your assets forever, letting them grow, and you just open up a little tap of liquidity through loans whenever you need it.
So all of this leaves us with one final and I think really important question to think about. When you look at your own financial life, is your wealth being built primarily on the income you earn, or is it being built on the assets you own? Really understanding the answer to that question, well, that could be the very first step toward changing your entire financial future.